This is Tony Yashar, and welcome to the return of That Game Talk, where we'll be discussing up-to-date current events in the sports world. Hello, what's up everybody? This is Tony Yashar. It's been a long time since we've done That Game Talk. I'm back to bring you some up-to-date news on some of the hot topics in the world of sports, predominantly the NBA and the NFL. But at this time, we want to jump right into it. Just the introductory topics on some of the things that have been taking place lately, especially concerning the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James' upcoming free agency. So we know that LeBron's free agency is a hot topic right now. Where will he go? What if he stays with the Cavaliers? So first and foremost, just to make a statement, I am a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. I lived in Cleveland for 17 years, graduated from high school in Cleveland, Ohio, and I became a Cavaliers fan before LeBron was a member of the team. So it's not a bandwagon thing. A lot of people are bandwagon fans or like fans just because they like certain players, which is understandable, but that's not the case with my affiliation with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So on to LeBron's free agency. I've been hearing a lot of different things about why LeBron would leave, anywhere from his disdain for owner Dan Gilbert because of how Dan Gilbert runs the team, or Dan Gilbert's affiliation with Donald Trump. So some of those are some of the things that have been talked about. Also, the whole narrative that LeBron James has fulfilled his promise to Cleveland, Ohio, the unfinished business that he stated he was coming back for in 2014 is now finished. As we all know that the Cavaliers are the first NBA team in NBA history to overcome a 3-1 final series deficit to win the NBA championship. And he ended a 52-year drought for the state of Ohio and for the city of Cleveland in any of the four major professional sports. So LeBron James accomplished his goal that he set out when he came back. He took care of unfinished business, and that gives him credence to be able to go wherever he chooses in order to pursue a championship. So there have been several teams that have been mentioned as possible destinations if LeBron James does choose to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers. So some of those teams are that I've heard the top teams have been the Lakers, 76ers. He's also been rumored to join up with Chris Paul and James Harden with the Houston Rockets, and some speculate that he's going to take a meeting with the Golden State Warriors, the San Antonio Spurs, and it's a possibility that he may even speak with the Boston Celtics. So there are a lot of different things that people have been talking about, noted sports writers, ESPN analysts, YouTubers who have created their own channel, such as this one, about where LeBron James is going to go. I personally hope he stays in Cleveland, but I can definitely understand if he does pursue ventures other places, considering the roster that has been put around him in Cleveland, and there's been much speculation, much debate about the roster in Cleveland, much criticism about the roster and the roster's capabilities and how it was put together. And so one of the things that I want to take a look at as far as his free agency is concerned is how this roster was constructed and LeBron's part in the way that the roster was constructed. So now we all know last August, Kyrie Irving was traded from the Cleveland Cavaliers to the Boston Celtics in exchange for Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and the Nets' first-round draft pick in 2018, which has now become the number 8th overall pick in this year's draft, and a trade exception or something of that nature. The problem with that trade is that it seemingly came out of nowhere that Kyrie asked for that trade, but what it in fact had been brewing, or reportedly had been brewing over the last couple of years, because in 2014 when he signed his extension coming off his rookie deal, that he was going to be the focal point of the franchise. And so he demanded a trade after hearing his name in trade rumors, which I personally wish they would have traded him for an Eric Bledsoe and a draft pick from the Suns, or I really had hoped that Paul George trade would have went through where Kevin Love was sent to the Denver Nuggets for Paul George to come back to Cleveland, and they could have teamed up. That would have been an awesome tandem. But instead of living in the past, let's deal with the future. As far as LeBron's free agency, Philadelphia is a viable option. It would require LeBron to play off the ball a lot more, because Ben Simmons is the de facto point guard there, even though they do have Markelle Fultz. But Ben Simmons has proven to be an excellent point guard, especially at 6'9". He's a 6'10", 6'9", Magic Johnson type point guard. He's actually a worse shooter at this point in his career, going into his second season than Magic Johnson, or was at that time. He's actually not even made a three-point shot in his NBA career, which is a problem going into the latter stages in his career, where teams will play off him more and allow him to shoot the ball because they don't have any fear that he's going to consistently make that shot. So that's a shot, I'm pretty sure, going into the offseason, that Ben Simmons is focused on improving that shot in order for his game to improve and become a bigger threat. But as far as LeBron going there, Ben Simmons playing off the ball would be a detriment to that team and to that offense with LeBron there, because he can't shoot at a certain range, which is going to clog up the passing lanes and is going to clog up the paint a little bit more, make things harder. As a point guard, if he's distributing the ball, he becomes like a Rajon Rondo type of player, where if he's not penetrating or getting to the rim, then he's able to distribute the ball to his shooters or dump it down low to Embiid. That will, negate some of the problems about people playing off of him. LeBron playing off the ball, and LeBron has developed a nice outside shot. He's shot a very good clip from three-point range this season and on the last couple of seasons. And so you wouldn't be as daring to let LeBron shoot or stand open and take open shots. As a matter of fact, at this junction in LeBron's career, that would be stupid to just let him shoot. And so Philadelphia would be a viable option. The Lakers would be a viable option because LeBron would automatically assume the alpha dog role in Los Angeles. It would allow him to dictate the offense. Lonzo Ball would learn a lot from LeBron. They can take turns distributing the ball and initiating the offense. And LeBron wouldn't have to concede as much to Lonzo Ball. Shooting remains subpar, but it's not the same as Ben Simmons. He doesn't have to have the ball as much as Ben Simmons in order to be the factor that Ben Simmons needs to be with the ball in his hands. And so there are a lot of young pieces around LeBron in LA in order for him to mold and shape. And I think it would actually, even with, a lot of people say that, if he goes to the Lakers, he's going to take Paul George or another star with him. But even with another star, they still, as well as with Philadelphia, that wouldn't necessarily guarantee them a championship or an appearance in the finals. It would be much easier for him to do it in Philadelphia because of the lack of quality teams that he would have to go through to get to the finals through the East. But in the West, he's going to have to climb past Minnesota, Portland, the Houston Rockets, the Golden State Warriors, the Utah Jazz, and several other teams that may or may not improve in order to at least challenge Golden State in the Western Conference Finals, or Houston for that matter, if they improve. And so those two options are there for LeBron if he chooses to leave the Cavaliers. Those are actually the best two options. The best fit would probably be San Antonio, but now you're talking about clearing up cap space and restricting LeBron's alpha dog status in Greg Popovich's system. And I know that it's been highly documented how much admiration that LeBron has for Coach Popovich, and how much admiration Coach Popovich has for LeBron, and admires his game and he admires his coaching style. And LeBron's never prayed for a coach of that quality, of that stature. And we all know that in San Antonio, Greg Popovich is San Antonio. That's his system, that's his culture. He's raised Hall of Fame players in that system over the last couple of decades. And so LeBron would go there and become a piece or a part within the system, and not necessarily be the system where he is everywhere else, or especially like he is in Cleveland. But they would have to clear up a lot of contracts in order to be able to fit LeBron into that. But that would be a good teaming. LeBron James with Kawhi Leonard, possibly LaMarcus Aldridge, Dejounte Murray, and that cast. Now, the other option that's been highly mentioned is LeBron James teaming up with Chris Paul and James Harden in Houston. And there's a couple of reasons why I don't feel that's something that's going to happen or that's something that will be successful. One thing that it wouldn't be successful because we talked about before how in Philadelphia, LeBron would have to play off the ball in order to coexist with Ben Simmons. He would have to play off the ball. He's going to have to do the same thing in Houston. And Houston is an isolation team, which LeBron is very familiar with, but James Harden and Chris Paul is that they are isolation players. They get the ball, they dribble to the shot clock is down to 10, 9, 8 seconds, and they either drive to the hole or kick it out to one of the shooters. And LeBron is not a stand in the corner catch and shoot player. And so his role and his effectiveness is going to drastically decrease according to his skill sets. LeBron's a facilitator, and one of his best assets is controlling the game and getting other players involved. So how he would mesh in Houston with Chris Paul and James Harden would be extremely interesting to me and difficult. And that's not including the fact that Houston doesn't actually have the salary cap to absorb LeBron James' salary if he still is planning on demanding a top dollar max salary. And so that doesn't seem like a good fit to me. They would also have to deplete their roster in order to free up the cap room to bring LeBron James in, unless LeBron would be so willing to go to Houston that he would sign a deal with Cleveland and have them trade him to Houston, in which then Cleveland would have to be willing to cooperate with that, which I could see them doing that because like they did with Miami, if LeBron leaves, it would be nice to get something in return. So that's it for LeBron James free agency. At this time, we'll have more to speak on that as things are coming across, or I have an opinion on that. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is a couple of rumors about not LeBron going other places, but ways that the Cavaliers can keep LeBron. So the King James Gospel had a couple of articles on his website today that interest me. One was a proposed trade, 3-team trade to bring Kemba Walker and Paul George to the Cavaliers. And a lot of people might say, well, that's far-fetched. But if you think about it, there may be a way that the Cavaliers could get that done. One of the most intriguing things about Paul George and his love for his hometown team, the LA Lakers, is that one of the things that he's always said is that he does want to play for his hometown team, but the most important thing for him at this particular point in time was winning. LeBron James highly recruited Paul George to join the Cavaliers last year before the 3-team trade that would have brought him to Cleveland in exchange for Kevin Love fell through. At the last minute, the Indiana Pacers decided to back out of the deal. We all know that situation. Paul George ended up with the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for Victor Oladipo, a couple of other role players that were sent to Indiana, and Paul George went to Oklahoma City, where Oklahoma City fell below expectations. Their highly talented big three of Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony, and Paul George didn't quite achieve the level that they were expected to achieve with the team that they had. Even though they did have an injury with Andre Robertson going down, primarily a defensive specialist, but that defensive specialist that he was very needed on that team. Was that the downfall of that team and of their achievements? No, I think that the style of Russell Westbrook's play and his mindset ultimately derailed that team. And Carmelo Anthony being in an unfamiliar role, still trying to play the role or be the same player that he was in the past, when it's obviously that he's not that player anymore, coming off the bench. Maybe it conflicted with his preparation or his mentality, but they jacked up a lot of threes. They took a lot of bad shots. They played excellent defense, but they weren't consistent enough to go deeper into the playoffs like they had expected to be. And so there's been a proposed trade that would send Paul George to the Cavaliers in exchange for Kevin Love and believe the other player name was either J.R. Smith or George Hill. And then another player name, I think it was J.R. Smith, and the number 8 pick to the Charlotte Hornets for Kemba Walker. Now, whether or not that trade can actually take place, that remains to be seen. But it is a distinct possibility that if LeBron James really wants to stay in Cleveland, which I've heard that he actually does, he just doesn't necessarily believe that the team around him is in a position to continue challenging for a title, or that team has to get better, and it does have to get better. If he can continue those negotiations with Paul George and convince Paul George that his opportunity to win a title, that path would be easier in the Eastern Conference if he joined the Cavaliers, then the deal might be able to be struck. Because if Paul George decides that he wants to play for the Cavaliers, and Oklahoma City, what they gave up to get Paul George, can no longer retain him, they may be willing to do a deal with Cleveland in order to get some return from Paul George. And Kevin Love would fit nicely with Russell, whom he played college basketball with at UCLA, so they do have familiarity with each other. So that might be something that could take place. I think what's very interesting about the next rumor is it absolutely, to me, bewildered me. It came out of nowhere. And the rumor is that Josh Cribbs has been quoted as saying that LeBron James is trying to recruit Russell Westbrook to force a trade to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now that's interesting to me. That's really interesting to me. I'm not a big Russell Westbrook fan. I admire his tenacity. I admire his no quit, but he's a detriment. I actually believe that Russell Westbrook in the final 3 games of the 2016 playoffs, his play and his decision making derailed the Oklahoma City Thunder's 3-1 playoff lead, Western Conference Finals against Golden State Warriors, that would have knocked the Warriors out of the playoffs that year. I believe that. He shoots way too much. He takes ill-advised shots. Shot selection is bad. I think he pads his stats. Like his triple-double average over the last 2 years is overrated. A lot of his bigs are giving him those rebounds. He sags off defense a lot in order to get rebound. He dribbles the ball to a pound of dust until he finds a teammate for an easy assist. And so I think that Russell Westbrook is more out for himself than he is for the betterment of the team. I'm not saying that he doesn't want to win, but I am saying that he wants to win his way and not the way that best fits the needs of the team. Now, if he's traded to the Cavaliers and teams up with LeBron James, can LeBron James have an effect on him that might change that? I think that's a big risk to take. But if that's enough to get LeBron to stay, then that would be a risk I would be willing to take. I just don't think that it's a good fit. And so that's a rumor that was dropped by Josh Cribbs. Forgive me for not being able to give you the source of that information, but I was reading that on Twitter today. So those are just some of the things that we wanted to touch base with on That Game Talk. Again, just reintroduce myself back onto YouTube, back onto Twitter. You can follow me at That Game Talk on Twitter. You can follow me at That Game Talk on the website for sports blogs and articles of any sort. So if you have any questions or concerns, leave them in the comment section. Feel free to bring up any topics, any comments. We'll address the topics. In the future, we'll be doing an online chat and a question and answer situation. And we'll be having some debates, fun debates, spirited debates with passionate NBA fans and passionate NBA analysts, people with their perspectives, and we'll jump right to it. Thanks again, everybody. This is Tony Ushar, That Game Talk. See ya.